Hi, I'm Arden. At my own wedding, my sister kept whispering, "Just wait, something big is coming." But what arrived wasn't for me. It was her engagement announcement, her logo on the gifts, her name on the cake. They turned my day into her stage, and I stood there, smiling, nodding, disappearing. My mom called it a misunderstanding. My dad said nothing. And the worst part? They knew exactly what they were doing, so I stayed quiet. Until I didn't. What would you do if your own family rewrote your wedding to feature someone else? The Thursday before it all began, I was sitting cross-legged in my home office, wrapping up floral confirmations for the ceremony, when my phone rang. Not a work number, not Elias, Callista. I stared at the screen for a second longer than I should have. Her name still triggered something tight in my chest. When I finally picked up, her voice flowed through the line like honey, just a bit too sweet to be natural. "Hey, little sis, I've been thinking about you." That wasn't how we usually started. Usually, it was about mom or dad or some newsworthy thing she did that somehow needed my approval. "Just wait," she said before I could answer. "Something big is coming. You'll love it." She didn't say what, didn't need to. That sentence, so familiar, so non-committal, carried all the weight of a promise she wouldn't have to keep. After the call, I sat there staring at the bouquet mood board on my laptop screen, but I wasn't really seeing it anymore. 3 weeks left until the wedding, and now I couldn't stop wondering what big thing she had planned. A part of me, the part that still missed how close we used to be when we were kids, wanted to believe it was something for me. That, maybe for once, she'd show up for me. It wasn't the first time I'd let that kind of hope in through the back door. Growing up in the Brandt household meant living in the wake of Callista's spotlight. She was the loud laugh at every dinner, the perfectly framed photo on every mantel, the student of the year, the pageant smile, the one everyone said, you could learn a thing or two from her about. I was the quiet achiever, the helper. Responsible, they called me. No one ever said memorable. I learned early that staying out of the way was easier than trying to compete. Even so, I had quietly marked this wedding as mine. Not just the event, but the moment. My choices, my guest list, my vows. Not the family's, not Callista's. A few days after her call, a cousin dropped off an extra invitation as a keepsake. She said it looked so elegant that I'd want to frame it. The envelope was thick, creamy, gold-trimmed, aesthetic perfection. Until I looked closer. Brandt family invites you to celebrate the union of Elias Ford and Arden Marin. Below that, in stylized script, hosted by Callista Gage. My name, Arden Marin, was barely visible, lost in pastel wash and fine print. Meanwhile, Callista's name floated on the paper like it belonged in the center. I blinked, held the card to the light, tilted it. It wasn't just an oversight. It was a design choice. The next morning, I drove over to Mom's house. Vera Brandt had always been the kind of mother who wore pearls with pajamas. She was pruning her front garden, snipping perfectly healthy roses because one petal had browned. I showed her the invitation. She didn't even squint. "It's beautiful," she said. "So elegant. That's Callista's touch, of course." "Why is she listed as host?" I asked, keeping my tone level. "Elias and I paid for the venue, and my name is practically invisible." Mom brushed soil from her gloves. "Darling, no one reads these things. It's the thought that counts." I didn't reply. I knew better. In our family, the details were never accidents. They were tools. That night, back at home, I sat on the edge of the bed with the invitation in my lap. The corners had already curled. I could have called Callista, but what would I say? That she turned my wedding into her brand statement? That my name was being erased by my own family's design team? Instead, I opened the drawer on my nightstand and placed the invitation under a stack of receipts and an old journal. Elias came in then, holding 2 mugs of tea. He didn't ask why my smile was a little tighter. I didn't offer. Around 11:03 p.m., my phone buzzed. A text from Callista. "Don't forget, something big is coming for you. No emojis, no punctuation, just the kind of message that makes you check the locks on your own heart. I smiled, the corners of my mouth lifting like muscle memory. But inside, something small and necessary broke away. I don't think she meant for me. That was the thought still circling my mind as I stepped into the chapel the next afternoon. Savannah's sun poured in through stained glass, casting warm golden patterns on the old wooden pews. It should have felt comforting, intimate even, but something about the energy in the room felt misplaced. I didn't feel like a bride stepping into her rehearsal. I felt like a guest arriving late to someone else's show. The decorations were close. White roses, yes. Brass candle holders, as I'd requested. But the tablecloths were swapped, ivory, not the dusty blue I'd chosen, and someone had added floating calla lilies to the altar arrangements. I didn't need to ask who. People milled about, chatting softly. A few nodded at me politely, but more eyes tracked Callista, who had just entered in a flowing blush dress, laughing with two of my bridesmaids. Her presence wasn't commanding, it was curated. Loud enough to draw the air around her, quiet enough to seem accidental. A young assistant holding a clipboard stepped forward and gestured to the aisle. "We're starting the run-through now. Everyone in place, please." I walked to my designated spot, heels clicking against the stone floor, and waited. As the organist played a soft intro, the MC stepped up with a microphone and a warm smile. "Let's welcome our beautiful bride, Callista Gage." My breath caught. The room didn't react right away. Just a beat of hesitation before someone politely clapped. "Callista." I didn't move. Neither did Elias, who was a few rows back, flipping through the dinner seating chart with the planner. I walked to the mic. Not quickly, not dramatically, just enough to be noticed. I took it gently from the MC's hand and spoke clearly. "I'm Arden Marin," I said. "The bride." My voice didn't shake. Callista giggled behind me. "Oh gosh, silly mix-up. That's what I get for helping with the paperwork." The MC gave a nervous chuckle and apologized. I handed the mic back, then stepped into place like nothing had happened. But inside, something hardened. Not rage, just a quiet steeliness, a confirmation that my instincts weren't wrong. Afterward, as people lingered near the buffet table, I felt a warm hand grasp mine. "You must be the maid of honor," the woman said, smiling wide. Her perfume smelled like old-fashioned gardenia. "Your sister shines today, doesn't she?" I swallowed and nodded once. "She always has." She didn't catch the tone. I moved to the side of the room and took a deep breath. When people forget you long enough, you start inventing reasons not to mind. Maybe they're tired. Maybe they don't mean it. Maybe you're easier to overlook. I looked for Elias. I found him by the back hallway, talking to the caterer, pointing at a list and nodding. He had no idea what had just happened, and I didn't rush to tell him. It wasn't about protecting Callista. I just didn't have the energy to rehash it again, to lay out another quiet humiliation and watch him try to fix it with logic. There was nothing logical about being erased. I left before dessert was served. The excuse was simple. Headache. I doubted anyone noticed. My dress brushed against my ankles as I walked down the chapel steps and toward my car. I sat in the driver's seat for a while before starting the engine. That night, at home, I made tea and sat by the kitchen window. My phone buzzed. A new notification from Callista. She'd posted a photo from the rehearsal. Both of us were in it, her in front, laughing, me blurred in the background, turning my head. Caption: "So proud to stand beside my baby sis as she starts her new life." I stared at it for a long time. Then, with one flick of my finger, I deleted the tag. "Beside me," I whispered. "You've been in front of me all day." I kept thinking it, over and over, like a quiet drumbeat in my chest. As I sat in the bridal suite, I was half dressed, half made up, half present. The silence felt unnatural, the kind that settles in places where joy should be humming. There was no music, no soft chorus of laughter, no clinking of mimosa glasses or friends buzzing around with pins and hairspray. Just the mechanical whir of a curling iron and the quiet tap of a phone buzzing across the room. Even the stylist seemed unsure. She worked in practiced silence, barely breathing as she twisted sections of my hair. Her hands were steady, but there was something hesitant in her eyes when they met mine in the mirror, like she could feel the weight in the air but didn't know how to name it. Then came the soft creak of the door. That familiar creak, like the one from our old farmhouse growing up. A sound I'd forgotten I remembered. Vera entered with that smooth, deliberate grace she always performed when there was an audience, even if it was just me. She held a small ivory box tied neatly with a champagne-colored ribbon. There was no hello, no warmth, just that brittle smile she wore like a mask. "I brought something for Callista," she said, her voice light, casual. I assumed it was some trinket, a brooch, a lace handkerchief, something meaningful but not central. An afterthought posing as tradition. She placed the box down on the vanity beside my untouched plate of fruit and toast. Then she paused, standing, still holding her composure like fine china. "It's your grandmother's ring," she said almost gently. "I think it suits Callista's hands better." The words landed like a stone thrown into still water. Sharp, disruptive, and unforgivable. My body responded before my voice could. My spine stiffened, my jaw locked. Behind me, the stylist's hands faltered. I saw her pause in the mirror, her eyes wide, unsure whether to keep working or back away. I blinked slowly, anchoring myself. Don't cry. Not now. Vera didn't flinch. She simply opened the box, tilting it toward the light like she was presenting a gift at a gala. And there it was. That ring, my grandmother's ring, nestled on soft velvet. A familiar band of warm gold with tiny oak leaves etched around its edge. The same one I used to trace with my finger while sitting beside Grandma on the screened porch, peeling oranges on napkins and listening to cicadas hum in the trees. She'd slipped it off her finger one summer, leaned close, and whispered, "This will be yours when it's your time, not when they say it is. When you know it is." I knew. Today should have been that day. But then Callista swept in, mid-laugh, mid-sentence, like she'd rehearsed this exact moment. She took the box without hesitation and slid the ring onto her finger, like it had been waiting for her all along. No pause, no glance back, no acknowledgement. Vera clapped softly. "Oh, it fits perfectly. Look at that." Callista raised her hand, tilting it to the light. "It's vintage. People love that online." She smiled for a photo, already posing. Vera raised her phone to capture it. I stood 5 feet away in a gown I hadn't chosen, surrounded by people who had stripped the meaning from everything sacred and stitched it onto my sister without blinking. No one asked if I wanted a photo. My phone buzzed on the counter. "Elias. Need anything?" I stared at it. For a moment, my fingers hovered. A different family. I typed it, then deleted it. Instead, I wrote, "All okay, just finishing up. I wasn't okay, but I was something else, still. That heavy stillness that descends when grief is no longer hot and loud, but frozen and sharp. There was no confrontation, no yelling or crying or begging. Just a cold, quiet realization that I would not beg people to remember I existed. Not anymore. The wedding would continue. Elias and I would exchange vows. The guests would clap and toast and dance, but some part of me had already stepped out, gone somewhere quieter, safer, further away. They'd been chipping away at me for years, taking what was mine and handing it to Callista like she was born more deserving. My ideas, my space, my voice. Now the final piece. The ring. Not reassigned out of necessity, but because, as Vera said, it fit better. I didn't fit better. I simply stopped trying to. Later that morning, while Vera fussed over flower girls and Callista checked seating charts, I slipped into the side room where my clutch had been left. I wasn't looking for anything, just a moment, a breath. But there, in the drawer beneath the veil and the emergency makeup kit, was a photograph. One I hadn't seen in years. It was me and Grandma. I must have been 6, missing my front teeth. She was wearing the ring, holding my hand. The background was blurred, but her eyes were clear, soft, bright, and entirely focused on me. On the back, in her script, to the granddaughter who never needed the spotlight to shine. I held it carefully, staring at both the image and my reflection in the mirror. "You were wrong, Grandma," I whispered, my voice shaking. "I needed it, just once." They erased me in front of everyone, but I'm still standing. That thought stayed with me as I peeked from behind the velvet curtain of the main hall, the lace of my dress brushing lightly against the floor. The soft hum of conversation was rising. Rows of guests were filling in, some fanning themselves, others craning their necks toward the entrance, as if expecting someone far more radiant than me. Maybe they were. I stood there, gown fitted just the way I asked for. Hair set in the low twist, Callista said, felt more elegant than what I'd originally wanted. I didn't argue then. I had already started conserving my energy. From where I stood, I could see her laughing with the videographer, showing him a photo on her phone. "It's all about flattering angles," she was saying. He nodded, adjusting his lens. She touched his arm like they were old friends. I breathed in slowly through my nose and stepped back into the shadows. It was like watching my own wedding through the wrong window. The coordinator dimmed the lights and signaled for the welcome presentation. The screen lowered, soft music began to play. A Brandt family memory reel. The first title card read. I stiffened. The first clip showed a grainy video of Callista's 3rd birthday. She was in a frilly yellow dress, cake on her cheeks, twirling for the camera. Then came her piano recital, her high school graduation, her pageant wave at 17, montage after montage, full of cheers and narrated by Vera's voice, played to a room clapping and smiling warmly. I waited for even a glimpse of me, but it never came. Not one baby photo, no awkward braces years, no messy Halloween costumes, not even the family trip to Asheville where I'd held our father's hand on the trail when Callista twisted her ankle. By the 3rd minute, it became obvious. Some guests began to glance around, as if noticing what I'd already felt since I was 10. That I could be in the room and still not be in the story. Vera clapped proudly at the end. Callista wiped away a fake tear. Elias squeezed my hand, but didn't speak. I didn't cry. There was no point in that now. I just sat there and let my image fade further, frame by invisible frame. The screen faded to black, then back on for the second reel, a guest messages video the videographer had compiled. I remembered the small room where I had filmed my clip earlier in the week. I had cried through it, thanking Elias, talking about how marriage was more than a party, how love showed up in the details. I had felt vulnerable, real, exposed. It wasn't there, but Callista's voice. Twice. One in a floral dress at the rehearsal dinner, smiling. So honored to stand by Arden as she steps into this new chapter. Then again, seated in the makeup chair. She's always been the strong one. I'm just lucky to watch her bloom. I leaned into Elias and whispered, I said everything I felt, and it never made it in. He leaned closer. I'll ask them about it. I shook my head. Don't bother. I didn't want them to fix it. It wasn't broken by accident. From that point on, I drifted. I smiled when prompted, tilted my head when photos were being taken. But inside, I was counting the seconds. Until vows, until dinner, until it would be socially acceptable to leave the reception early, until I could go home and wash this day off my skin. The officiant gave a soft tap on the mic and called for everyone to settle in. My body moved automatically toward the doors, but my mind stayed seated. As I stepped into the aisle, I glanced down at the carpet, one of those generic burgundy and gold swirls you see in every rented hall. It didn't look like mine. None of it did. They erased me in front of everyone. I whispered under my breath, but I'm still standing. Then I looked up, right into the camera lens across the aisle, and I didn't look away. By the time the reception began, the hall had softened. What had once felt formal and cold during the ceremony now shimmered under chandeliers and tiny candle flames, casting golden reflections across the glassware and polished floors. It should have felt like magic. Elias stood beside me, fingers brushing mine. Guests were smiling, sipping cocktails, lost in their own laughter. The plates clinked gently. The air buzzed with warmth. But I wasn't in the room. I stood just beyond the edge of the dance floor, heels buried in the carpet, breath held somewhere between dread and disbelief. The DJ raised a hand toward the coordinator. Elias leaned toward me, eyes kind. "You ready?" he asked. I nodded. The motion was automatic. Our first dance. I'd chosen the song weeks ago, deliberately. A quiet, hushed melody we'd once played while making pasta on a rainy Tuesday. No sweeping chorus. No cinematic build. Just simple notes, like a heartbeat. Our song, ours. Elias gave my hand a light squeeze, then turned to the coordinator. "We're good?" She smiled. All set. The lights dimmed. Conversation stilled. All eyes turned toward us. And then the music started. It wasn't ours. It was bright, loud, poppy. A sugary tune that belonged to another time entirely. I recognized it instantly, not from the radio, not from Elias, from Callista. It was her song, the one she and I used to choreograph dances to when we were kids, barefoot, dizzy, spinning across the living room rug like it was a Broadway stage. We'd laughed until our sides hurt, pretending to be stars. I stood frozen, half-turned toward Elias. The guests clapped, assuming it was intentional. A few cheered in nostalgia. "Oh my God, I remember this!" someone called. "Throwback!" Elias's face twisted with confusion. "We can stop," he said quietly, but I shook my head. "No," I whispered. "Let's finish this one." So we danced. We moved through the steps, not with joy, not with intimacy, but with restraint. Every motion was deliberate, every smile choreographed. I matched Elias's rhythm, but my body felt hollow. When the music ended, applause followed, loud and expectant. Somewhere in the back, a voice shouted, "Sisters forever!" I didn't turn. I walked off the floor and headed straight for the corner table, where I'd left my glass of water. A few minutes later, Callista found me. She moved like she always did, poised, effortless. A glass of something pale sparkled in her hand. She stood beside me like it was the most natural thing in the world. "I thought it'd be a sweet callback," she said breezily. "A little tribute to us. People loved it." I didn't look at her. I didn't blink. "You hijacked a moment that wasn't yours." Callista tilted her head, feigning innocence. "It's all in the family, right?" "No," I said slowly, turning to face her. "This wasn't about family. This was supposed to be about partnership, about Elias and me. But you made it about legacy." Her smile faltered, just barely. "You're being dramatic." "No, I'm being clear." And I walked away. Later that night, long after the dances and toasts had faded into background noise, I saw her again, this time seated near the lounge fireplace. She was surrounded by admirers, their voices low and adoring. Compliments about her dress, her toast, her presence floated around her like perfume. I waited until the last person stepped away. Then I approached. "You don't get to write me into your highlight reel," I said. Callista looked up, surprised. "What are you talking about?" "You don't get to co-opt my life into your monologue. I'm not your subplot. I'm not your nostalgic callback." She blinked. "Have you had too much wine?" "I haven't had a drop." I left before she could recover. My heels echoed against the wood as I moved away, heart steady, spine straight. As I passed the DJ booth near the back hallway, something caught my eye. A clipboard taped to the wall. The printed playlist for the reception. I paused. My song, the one I had chosen for our first dance, was there, crossed out in thick black ink. And in the margin, in unmistakable pen, the title of the song Callista and I used to spin to in our childhood. I stared at it for a second, then pulled out my phone. Click. I took the photo. Because here's the thing about people who rewrite history to center themselves. They always leave a trace. And sometimes, the best way to protect your truth is to keep the receipts. I whispered those words to myself as Elias and I were called toward the cake table. The lights dimmed again, the DJ's voice playful and upbeat. "Let's welcome the couple for their first official slice!" My hand found Elias's automatically, and we moved through the crowd, people parting like petals under pressure. Camera flashes started early. I caught Vera standing near the edge of the crowd, her arms folded like a proud sponsor. Callista was at her side, champagne in one hand, phone in the other. Always capturing, never being. The cake stood tall, a clean ivory tower with soft gold piping. It was exactly what I'd approved, until I saw the topper. There, in curved script so shiny it caught every bit of spotlight, were the words, "Callista and Elias." The air shifted. A few people laughed awkwardly. One person clapped, then stopped. Elias's hand tightened on mine, then released. He looked at me, frozen mid-reach for the knife. My eyes didn't leave the letters. I leaned in close to him and said calmly, "Cut it. Let them eat it." And he did. We cut the slice, smiling for the photos. Guests clapped. Vera dabbed the corner of her eye with a tissue. Callista lifted her glass. "To family!" she called out. I didn't raise mine. A few hours later, back in the bridal suite, Elias glanced down at his phone. His brow creased. "We just got hit for $2,000, he said, "from our joint fund." He showed me the screen. The charge read, "Gage Jewelers." I stared at it, not surprised, just affirmed. "She used our money to buy that ring she's flashing tonight," I murmured. Elias's mouth opened, but nothing came out. He sat on the edge of the couch, elbows on knees. "She had access to it?" he finally asked. I nodded. Mom added her as a backup when we opened the account, said it was just in case something needed to be processed fast. His jaw twitched, but he said nothing else. Because what was left to say? I left the room a few minutes later, heels silent on the hallway rug. I didn't slam the door. I didn't tell anyone where I was going. I just walked. First stop, the planner's station near the kitchen. I asked politely for the cake order form and event timeline. The assistant hesitated. I waited, not blinking. She handed me a folder. Inside were the mock-ups. 2 of them. One with Arden and Elias, dated 2 weeks ago. One with Callista and Elias, dated 5 days ago. Both approved, both signed. Guess which one Mom initialed. I folded the papers gently, slid them into my clutch. Then I walked past the DJ booth, where the old playlist was still taped to the speaker. There it was again. My original first dance, neatly crossed out in red pen. A new song handwritten beside it, the same one Callista had picked. I took a photo, then opened a folder on my phone labeled Proof, and dropped it in with the others. Back in the suite, I didn't speak to Elias. Instead, I opened a blank email and added 2 addresses, vera.bronte and callista.gajim. No subject line, no body. 4 attachments. Cake order with dual versions. Bank withdrawal receipt. Playlist edit. Original dance contract, signed by me and Elias. Subject line, documentation for your records. I hit send. Closed the laptop. Took one long breath. Outside, the music was still going. The sound of clinking glasses drifted through the doors. I returned to the hall slowly, the hem of my dress brushing the steps. No one noticed I'd gone. They were too busy laughing. Callista was by the fireplace now, mid-laugh, holding court. She looked free, effortless. She had no idea. I stood a few feet away, smiling. Not out of joy, not anymore. But out of clarity. Let her enjoy the party, I'm just getting started. The toast was supposed to be about us. Elias and I stood near the head table, fingers loosely entwined, both of us waiting, maybe hoping, that this night would finally feel like it belonged to us. But then Vera lifted her champagne glass and gently tapped it, commanding the room like she was opening a gala at a museum instead of her daughter's wedding. "Thank you all for coming," she began, her tone perfectly measured, practiced. "Tonight is a celebration of love, of family, of legacy." I waited, for my name, for Elias's, for some sign that she remembered whose wedding this actually was. But before she could even finish, Callista glided forward like she was born for the spotlight. She looped her arm around Vera's waist and took the microphone like it had been waiting for her all along. "While everyone's here," she said brightly, with the wide, polished grin of someone about to steal the show, "I wanted to share a little something of my own." I felt my stomach drop, hard. She turned to the crowd, practically glowing. "I'm engaged!" Gasps, then cheers, then the sound of champagne flutes rising into the air. One voice shouted, "Double celebration!" Elias's hand tensed in mine. He looked at me, but we both said nothing. What could we say? Callista raised her hand like she was on stage, her new engagement ring catching the lights overhead. It shimmered in the most calculated way, like it had been rehearsed. And I knew the ring. I'd seen it in our joint account activity. She used our money. Vera clutched her chest like she might cry. "We're just so blessed," she whispered, voice cracking in just the right places. They didn't look at me, not once. It was as if the bride didn't exist. I wanted to say something, to scream, but I didn't. I stood there, smiling like a cardboard cutout at my own wedding, swallowing every protest, every truth. Dinner passed in a blur. At some point, the plates were cleared and people started mingling, drifting toward the bar and gift table. That's when guests began opening the small linen gift bags we'd spent weeks assembling. At least, I thought we had. Inside each one, a soy candle, a jar of artisanal honey, a card. One of my coworkers turned to me, smiling. "This is so chic. Did you design the branding yourself?" I froze. "What?" He handed me the card. "Thank you for celebrating with us. Follow Callista Gage's new brand journey. Au Callista Grace Official." I picked up the candle. Her logo was etched into the glass. Etched. She used my wedding, as the soft launch for her new lifestyle brand. It hit me slowly, like cold water seeping through fabric. I didn't cry. I didn't flip the table. I just sat there and picked up my fork like I hadn't just been shoved off the stage of my own life. 20 minutes passed. That's how long it took for Elias to notice. "You okay?" he finally asked, his voice low. I shook my head. "No," I said. "I'm done pretending this was ever about us." He reached for my hand, but I was already opening the Notes app on my phone. I created a new file, titled it Truths to be Told, and I began typing. It wasn't rage, it was clarity. The kind that comes when you're no longer trying to win, just ready to walk away with your dignity intact. I stood, quietly, walked past Vera, past a circle of guests, congratulating Callista like she was the one in white. She was near the back now, posing for photos, candle bag in one hand, other hand raised to show off her ring like she was at a press junket. I waited until the laughter died down, until two cousins beside her went quiet. And then, I said, clear and steady, "Don't confuse silence with permission. That was the last thing you'll take from me." Callista blinked. Her smile froze. No one laughed. She opened her mouth, but I didn't wait. I turned and walked away, out of the noise, down the corridor, toward the tall glass windows that faced the square. I stood alone, watching the lights blur across the dark glass. Savannah looked calm out there. Quiet, like it didn't know what had happened inside. I opened the folder on my phone labeled Proof. Inside, screenshots of our shared bank account, a charge for the ring, the custom playlist file she edited, the cake order she changed, the logo design files, her press cards, a photo of the etched candle jars. My wedding, piece by piece, repurposed into her promotional campaign. I wrote a caption, "The wedding wasn't mine, but the truth will be." I sat with it. Then I saved the draft, but didn't hit publish. Not yet. Because when I tell the truth, it won't be petty. It will be complete. And it will be unforgettable. The wedding wasn't mine. But the truth will be. I stood at the edge of the room, watching the last of the champagne glasses being cleared, the DJ beginning to fade into the night's slow set. My heels hurt. My face ached from all the pretending. I slid my phone out of my clutch and tapped the link the photographer had sent earlier. Preview album, Brantford Wedding Highlights. The first image loaded quickly. Callista standing with Vera, arms locked, both laughing like it had been their victory parade. Second image, Callista and Elias. Third, Vera adjusting Callista's hair. Fourth, Callista twirling one of the flower girls. I scrolled and scrolled. 41 images in, my back appeared in a mirror, adjusting a hem. That was it. No portraits. No shots of me at the altar, at the cake, by the arch I'd chosen. My bridal suite shots. Gone. It wasn't a memory reel. It was a rerun of Callista's curated image. I didn't call the photographer. I didn't ask for corrections. I knew who had provided the photo list. I tapped Save All and closed the link. The lights outside the window danced against the late evening air. I slipped out of the room and headed upstairs to the bridal suite one last time. The room was quiet, just the lingering scent of hairspray and roses that had sat too long in water. I reached for my clutch, intending to gather my things, when something inside shifted. A small envelope, sealed, tucked into the lining of a folded scarf I hadn't opened since the morning. The handwriting stopped me. It was hers. Grandma's cursive, slanted, gentle. I broke the seal with shaking fingers. To the granddaughter who never asked to be seen, but always deserved to be. That was all it said. One line, on a plain, folded note card. I sank onto the small velvet stool and stared at the words. It wasn't long, but it was more than anyone else in that building had managed to say to me all day. I didn't cry because I was sad. I cried because someone once saw me, without an audience, without a campaign. Just saw me. That moment broke something in me, but not in a way that left me empty. It cleared a path. I reached into my purse and opened the folder labeled Proof. My fingers flew. Cake photos, the bank alert, audio files, playlist markup, the fake gifts, Callista's announcement, and now, this photo album. I pulled up a voice recording I had made the night before. Something raw, barely edited. Just me. This was supposed to be a wedding, I had said into my phone mic, but it turned into an audition I never asked to be part of. I synced the folder, paired the recording, hit export, and scheduled the file for midnight. I didn't need to explain it. It would speak for itself. By the time I came back down, most of the guests had moved outside for dessert and music. I slipped into the guest room and changed into a simple cream dress. No veil. No sparkle. I brushed my hair into a soft bun and pulled off the lashes that felt like armor. Elias was near the fireplace, talking quietly with one of his cousins. When he saw me, he stepped forward. I kissed his cheek. "We'll do our vows again," I whispered. "Somewhere real." He didn't ask questions. He just nodded. "I'll drive." As we crossed the foyer, Callista called out, "Where are you going? You'll miss the sparkler send-off." I turned slightly. "Someplace where I'm not a prop in your campaign." She blinked, caught off guard. But I didn't stop walking. Once outside, the air hit cooler against my skin. The sounds of the band softened behind me. I breathed in deep. For the first time all day, I could actually hear myself think. We reached the car just as my phone buzzed. A message, no name attached. Just a number I didn't recognize. "You were never supposed to see that letter." I stared at the screen for a few seconds, then typed back. And yet, I did. That reply sat on my screen for a while, glowing in the dark as the car rolled past the empty storefronts of downtown Savannah. Elias had offered to drive. No questions, no pressure, just presence. By the time we pulled into the driveway, The world outside was asleep. I waited until the door clicked shut behind us before I opened my laptop. The file had finished uploading, titled plainly, "The Brant Wedding Campaign, Uncut." Inside, everything. The mismatched photos, the payment logs, the video, my voice. I didn't promote it, didn't even tag names. But I knew how stories like this traveled. Whispers, screenshots, group chats that lit up before the sun did. By morning, my inbox was full. A former coworker wrote, "I always wondered what went on behind that smile of yours. Now I know." My college roommate said, "That took guts and class." There were dozens of messages. Some stunned, some supportive, some, notably, silent. Vera didn't reply. No call, no email, no statement. Callista? She posted a vague Instagram story before noon. "Some people thrive on drama. I choose peace and purpose." It had a white background and a black heart. I didn't respond. Later that day, as I washed dishes, my phone buzzed again. It was my father. We hadn't spoken outside of group dinners or birthdays in months. I wiped my hands on a towel and stared at the screen for a few seconds before answering. "Hi, Dad." He exhaled like the call itself took effort. "I saw the video." I waited. "I didn't know," he added. "That's on me." I leaned against the counter. "You didn't want to know. That's different." A beat passed. Then, quietly, he said, "You're right." It wasn't forgiveness, but it was acknowledgement. That afternoon, a delivery arrived. A small box wrapped in recycled paper. The final photo package from the wedding photographer. I opened it slowly, expecting the same edited parade I'd seen online. But this time, there were unflattering shots. Ones with me, mid-laugh, blurry movements, hands covering my mouth, eyes red. Honest moments. I picked one, me holding the mic, face lit by candles, speaking words no one remembered. I framed it and placed it on the bookshelf in my studio. Beneath it, I had a small plaque made. Seen or not, I was there. A few days later, Elias made breakfast. Just scrambled eggs and toast. As he slid the plate across the counter, he smiled gently. "Let's get married again," he said. "For real this time. Just us." "No fanfare?" I asked. He grinned. "No speeches, no candles with other people's logos. Just vows we choose." "And music I approve." He nodded. It was enough. That evening, I walked along the riverside alone. The sky had started to soften into that burnt orange glow Savannah wears like a badge near sundown. I thought of Grandma, her porch, the heat of summer fruit, the ring I never received, and the letter I did. I didn't feel bitter. I didn't want revenge. I just wanted distance. I hadn't burned the bridge, but I stopped repainting it. And that's how I left the party. Not in rage, but in peace.